Welcome to the Movies of the Damn podcast. My name is Kyle Grant, and I'm sitting here with my friend and published horror author, John Hunt. If you enjoy what you hear here today, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our Facebook page, and follow us on both Instagram and Twitter, @DamnMovies. Email us any questions, comments, and suggestions to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. For further details on John's published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Today, we'll be discussing John Landis's 1981 film, An American Werewolf in London. The movie opens with two Americans, Jack and David, backpacking across England. After a dispute in a pub, the Americans are forced out on foot in the middle of the night. They are soon attacked by an animal, later learned to be a werewolf. Jack is killed, and David is severely injured and transported to a hospital in London. During his recovery, David is visited by Jack's ghost, who warns him that he is now a werewolf. David chalks this up as a warning to a hallucination, though, and disregards it. After being released, he moves in and starts a romantic relationship with Nurse Alex from the hospital. However, when the next full moon arrives, David realizes Jack's warnings were true, transforming into a werewolf and killing 6 innocent people. The next day, David tries to commit suicide but can't bring himself to do it. When nightfall hits, he again transforms, but this time is cornered and killed by police. The movie ends as Alex tearfully mourns his death. Just to let everyone know, this movie was suggested to us by Sean Small. He reached out to us through the Twitter handle @TheSeanSmall and requested an episode on this movie. So that's how we got here today. John, opening thoughts on the movie?
Yeah, I love this movie. It holds up well. I have nothing but good things to say about this film. Like, I've heard other people say, okay, without the special effects, what do you have? And I'm going to say you still have a fantastic movie, a well-written script, good acting, great characters, good levity, comedy, music. I love this movie.
Right off the top here, I have a confession for you. I never saw this movie before. And I know how ridiculous that sounds, and I feel ridiculous now after having watched it, but hear me out here. So this movie came out before I was born. And I had actually seen this. I watched the sequel when it came out, An American Werewolf in Paris, I think it was called. And I did not like that movie. I did not think it was very good.
It wasn't.
I wasn't into it. And then when it's like, should I go back and watch the original when I really didn't like the sequel and it came out so long ago? And I'm like, meh, just never got around to it. Was never interested. And now I'm kicking myself. This movie was awesome.
Here's the thing, though. Like, if a movie spawned a sequel, the original had something to it.
No, and you're right. You're right. Maybe I was just young and dumb. Who knows? But I'd never seen this before. And now after watching it, I'm like, I need to watch it again because it's good,
it's
right?
So good.
And your comment there, what is this thing without special effects? This thing is so much more. I wasn't expecting this to be a horror comedy.
Yeah, I know.
I thought there was a lot of funny scenes in it, right?
A lot of great.
Well acted, like you said. The special effects, the makeup for 1981, this must have blown people away.
Oh, I know. Rick Baker was a special effects guy. Amazing.
And it actually won an Oscar for Best Makeup. And
Well,
this was the first year ever that Oscar was handed out.
Really, eh?
So there's a trivia question for you that you can win some money on. What's the movie that won the first ever Oscar for Best Makeup? American Werewolf in London.
They probably watched this movie and like, we need an Oscar for this.
Yeah, we got to make up a category because this is insane.
I know. It's such a good job. Such a good job.
And as I was just saying, a lot of funny things. Like, I loved when they stumbled across that first pub, and the pub's name is the Slaughtered Lamb. And it's like, let's check this place out, right?
They're like, where's the lamb? It's just a wolf on the side.
Yeah. And so I thought that was interesting. And then so obviously they go into the pub and they kind of. We'll say that the locals aren't fans of these two young Americans, right?
They're not fans of any strangers.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Anyone that's not from their town, they're not a fan of.
And I get that. And so they kind of are forced out on foot there, and then they get attacked by this wild animal.
Yep.
And I thought it was kind of an interesting scene. David starts running away.
Yeah.
And then comes back.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
I felt fine about that. Like,
you thought it was reasonable?
Well, you don't?
Well, I think you're doing one or the other. It's a fight or flight. You don't usually see a mixture of both.
Well, I don't know, because like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, this just happened, and the flight kicks in, right? And you're not thinking, obviously. You're just running. right?
Yeah.
You're terrified. You're just running. And then you get away, a certain distance away, and you kind of feel the safety, a bit of more safety, and then your cognition kicks back in. You're like, I just left my friend to die. So then he goes back. I have no problem with that. I think it's a very reasonable way to go.
Okay, fair enough. Now, and so I can get behind that a little bit. I just thought it was almost comical as he's like running and the camera's on him. He's like, oh no, and I can't remember
He's like,
exactly.
Jack, and
Oh,
he
no,
turns
Jack!
around,
And
right?
then starts running back, right?
Yeah,
at
yeah.
the same speed. I thought that was interesting. Now, just to back up a little bit before that happens, how did you feel about the reaction of the townsfolk kind of like kicking them out from the bar or the pub, I guess, and then having like feeling, I guess it was like the waitress or the owner, she like convinced them this is wrong, and then they go out to kill the werewolf. I don't know.
I don't know if they went out to kill the werewolf. I thought they went out to find the two Americans, right? That's what I thought they went to do. And then they stumbled upon, the werewolf and the dead one and then him.
Okay.
My only real tiny kind of issue with this.
Well, they were the ones who killed the werewolf.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
My only small tiny issue with this is that they know he was attacked, right? They know he got a slash across the face and he had a slash on the chest. And, being where they are and the secret they were trying to protect, they had to know they knew what was going to happen to him. And they let him go.
Yeah. So, and that's exactly kind of what I'm coming at, right?
Yeah.
I think you either don't care that these kids are going to get killed and you send them out, or you keep them in. They were kind of like in between, which didn't really make sense to me.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like that. I didn't have a problem with that. So you have an attack of conscience, right? You go after, right? You go out, especially when you have someone in the room telling you, we're kind of terrible people right now. And then you could see from their body language the way they were looking down. They didn't want to go out there. Absolutely. They didn't think it was their problem or their business, but they also knew, especially after they heard, the werewolf screaming in the background, that, there's a potentiality for these kids, these two kids to be murdered. And then they let him go.
I would have almost liked it more if there had been more of a confrontation at the pub. Like there was like a real reason why the Americans got kicked out, Jack and David. Where really like it didn't seem like much happened. It was just like we don't like strangers around here, right?
It wasn't even that though. No, it wasn't that at all. They were fine. They were having a tea. Everything was fine. It's when he asked about the pentagram on the wall.
That's when they got kind of.
That's when they got kicked out, right? Because this whole town has been around protecting the secret forever. So now these kids ask him this question about this pentagram on the wall and everything like that, and you think they'd have a good answer by now, but they didn't. And their whole thing was, you're prying into our business. You
deserve to die.
You're not welcome here, right? Well, they knew they were kind of concerned about him. They said, beware the moon, stick to the roads, avoid the moors, right? They told him the rules. And for them, that's like good. It's not like as soon as they sent them out, they knew these guys would be murdered. They didn't know that. They just knew that they didn't want them there and didn't want to answer any questions that made them uncomfortable. When they heard the werewolf and the woman saying, you have to go after them, you shouldn't have let them leave, or you can't let them leave, then that's when it came to them like, you know what? They still didn't know if these guys stuck to the road, they should be fine. So they just went out. Let's just bring them back. We'll have a couple of beers and everything will be fine. Like that's they went out to get the American. They didn't go out to like hunt this werewolf. They didn't go out to like save anyone. To me, it was just, like okay,
a sober second thought.
Yeah, let's just go get him. That's all. To me, that's what it was like. I didn't have any question with that at all.
Okay.
My only question is, if they know that this guy's going to turn into a werewolf and kill other people, they should have killed him then.
Yeah, no, but I guess like if all the townspeople are aware, that's the impression I got at least, and it's like, stay inside, lock the doors, like it'll just go and kill wild animals or anything like that.
Yeah.
Or I guess any passerbyers.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah. I guess they're caught between a rock and a hard place because they probably like this guy. Like they would know who he was, right? He would be someone they grew up with.
The guy they killed, the werewolf.
Yeah,
they
the
killed?
one who was the werewolf. Yeah. You
Yeah.
know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
It's just like your neighbor. You see him every day, and your friends. And then
I meant they should have killed our main guy.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay, now I got you. To
Right.
not bring more attention to the town.
No, to not leave there and kill 6 other people. They
Oh,
know he's
okay.
going to turn into a werewolf, and they know he's going to murder other people.
Yeah, because you're right. When they come across him and they kill the werewolf, he's just lying there bleeding. They don't have to take him to a hospital because they
No.
know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
That's the only problem I had with it, right?
Okay.
But with letting him go, if you didn't let him go, you wouldn't have the movie, right? So,
And and it brought a lot of other cool things. And speaking to the werewolf itself, I love that for the most part, until the big transformation scene, all the werewolf shots were kind of from far away.
yeah.
So it kept you guessing. You couldn't really nitpick at any like bad details
Yeah.
or in the special effects. I just
Yeah.
thought those camera angles were all amazing.
This movie mastered that, right? Mastered the art of showing just enough, right?
Just enough and
Yeah.
not trying to do too much, right?
Yeah.
Because I would think that if they did maybe too many close-up scenes, just with the technology they had in 1981, it might not have looked amazing.
For sure. And I think they were very aware of that. Like, we're going to do the best that we can with what we have. And I think they utilized every trick that they could, right? The camera angles, the lighting, like everything, man. Like, it's so well done. It's so good for that. So good for that.
So he gets attacked. The townspeople obviously call ambulance. He wakes up in the hospital in London, and he kind of has a bit of a confrontation with, I want to say, like the hospital staff, the police, and there's a great line in there. I don't know if you
I
picked
think
it.
it's the U.S. Embassy guy.
Yes, you're right. Sorry, it was the
Yeah.
embassy. It wasn't the police. There's a great line where he says, "Dumbass kids never appreciate anything you do for them."
I know.
And I just love that line because that is what people are saying nowadays about
Oh, yeah.
kids. But this was 40 years ago.
I
So
know.
this is something that always goes on where like every generation thinks that this new generation is the end of the world. They don't appreciate anything. They don't have the same values. I just thought that was a very cool line from 40 years ago.
Dude, Socrates has this, he goes on and off on a paragraph about teenagers, and it's exactly the same as they are now. Like, it's the exact same thing. They don't listen to their parents. They think they know everything, blah, blah. Like, they haven't changed for over 2,000 years, man.
Since
Like,
the beginning of time, it's been the same conversation over and over and over again, right? So
but
next,
every generation thinks they're new and exciting. No, you're not. You just have different things to worry about.
yeah. So for all of our listeners out there, the next time you have an issue with the youth of today, remember this, right? You were once that youth that
Yeah.
everyone thought was the end of the world. I just thought that was a really cool line.
It's
and I
a
wanted
great
to
line.
make note
For
of
sure,
it, right?
For sure.
But then he kind of starts having these nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
The one nightmare, oh my gosh, the home invasion one.
Dude, Brad, I'm glad you brought that up. Go ahead.
I didn't know what to expect. I didn't really know what was happening. And then when it was, I'm like, oh my gosh.
I
Right?
know.
Just very cool stuff.
That scene gave me nightmares when I was a kid. Like,
Seriously.
yeah, for sure. Because it was just like, what does it illustrate perfectly, right? You had like almost like the Nazi uniforms, and these monsters wearing these Nazi uniforms, and they come in and they overwhelm, and this guy's helpless. He's helpless while they murder his family in front of him. Like, it was just
I can't think of anything worse than that.
no. It's that's what I mean. Like, so when I was a kid, I had nightmares, and like, all the you read these books about dystopian societies and all this type of stuff, and I'm like, that image always seems to pop up in my head when I'm reading a book of that nature. That's how powerful it was, and for you to first time to have seen it and bring it up, it's still powerful.
It still works now, right?
Yeah.
And we're closing in on 40 years later. You brought up earlier that you really liked some of the acting in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I agree with you. The one character that I loved the undead Jack character.
Yeah, he did a great job.
Oh,
He was so
my-
gross to look at too, right?
And every scene he's a little bit more
yeah,
decomposed,
more deteriorated.
right?
Yeah,
But he just like I just loved the way that they portrayed it, that it was acted, that it was written, that it like he wasn't overly upset.
no,
He's just like, yeah, whatever. Hey, man, I'm just going to warn you about this. You should
Yeah.
really kill yourself, right? And it led to so many awesome scenes, like when they're in the theater
yeah.
and he's joined by the
6
other
people he just murdered.
and they're all kind of this like spitballing ways that he could kill himself.
yeah.
Like, I'm like, this is so morbid, such a morbid conversation, but
Yeah.
I'm chuckling, I'm laughing
I know,
at this.
it's great.
It's like, it just takes like a real special writer, director, and actors to pull something like that off.
Yeah.
We're going to have a conversation about suicide, and it's going to be hilarious.
Yeah, I know.
Like, how ridiculous is that?
I know, it was so good. So good.
So, and you just had a lot of, like, really cool things like that.
I was Jack at the very beginning when he first met him in the hospital, and you could see his trachea through a gash in his neck, and his skin is like flicking, and I'm like, oh my god, the special effects are so good.
It's like a rooster.
Yeah, so he was like, but he was like funny. There's some levity in there when he was talking to him about killing himself, and how he's gonna roam the earth in this undead state, all this type of stuff. He was talking about that, but there's the levity there, but then he was also very gross to look at. Like it was uncomfortable to look at and I was like, these special effects are so good. Like how he's uncomfortable to look at, but he's also funny. So you don't want to look away, but you don't want to look either, right? So
yeah, it just made for a very unique scene, a very unique situation that kind of, I love that they kept bringing him back. I love that it wasn't just like a one visit from the undead. I love that he like kept popping up.
Yeah,
which I thought was
urging him to do the deed, right?
Which I thought was very cool.
Yeah.
Now, as usual, my issue with the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Issue number 1. The doctor goes to do the investigation.
Mm-hmm.
Issues with that for 2 major reasons.
Yes.
Number 1, doctors are not detectives. They're not police officers. They're not investigators. They don't go and do this type of thing.
Yeah.
And number 2, the ramblings that he had about the werewolf story, that would not faze a doctor, because a doctor working in the emergency room, working at a hospital, hears wild and crazy ramblings all the time from people who actually do have mental health issues and things like that. So he wouldn't be fazed by this werewolf story, and he would never go and investigate it. Even if it was legitimate, he would just pass that on to the police.
So
do you hear my 2 issues there?
I do, but I absolutely disagree. And here's why. He met with the police, and they did not impress him, right?
So he's done his due diligence. He's passed it on to the authorities.
He's done that, right? And they did not I actually thought the police were pretty funny in this. The one guy with the short tie and knocking stuff over, and he's just socially awkward. I think he did a great job. But that being said, so he spoke to the police, and the police, and he had questions about how he showed up in his hospital. He was already treated, and and his friend, and from the wounds and everything like that, like he was certain that it was an animal that attacked him and killed Jack, right? And there's no other, like there wasn't anything else there that would make the doctor think that this guy is suffering from anything. Like he was very, very sure that it was an animal. So the doctor didn't think werewolf. He didn't think that at all. He just thought, okay, maybe it was an animal, and people aren't telling us anything. And you know what? Or not telling us the whole story. Even when he was talking to the nurse, he said, well, I don't think he's going to, become a werewolf and start killing people. I just think that, this whole town believes in this werewolf phenomenon and these animal phenomenon, and maybe that could be transferred to him, and he might be a danger to himself or others. So he never bought into the actual werewolf thing. Like, he made that very clear. It was very clear that he's more science-based, but he thought the police investigation was shoddy, and this was his patient, and in order to do the best that he can for his patient, and I think he was genuinely curious about what actually transpired. So I don't have an issue with that. I told you what my issue with this movie was, but I don't have an issue with that.
I guess I just have a hard time believing that a doctor would go and do this investigation, or even really care that much. Like, the doctor's job is to treat people. Yeah, but you got to remember, we are still talking 40 years ago. Like, doctors used to make house visits. They actually cared about their patients, right?
Okay. And it's fair to say that he's an emergency room doctor, and maybe he's not exposed to that type of thing. But once again, the people that he was dealing with, the police and the embassy, these people were not very impressive to him. They didn't ask the questions that he thought should have been asked. Yeah, they seemed to just, the way that they were portrayed in the film is they really didn't care. No, they were doing like the min effort, as little as possible, to kind of get this done and over with, right? They were the doctors in this, right? Yeah. So there was that. And one thing that I thought was pretty cool is that so the director has since
this film has come out, has kind of had some regrets about this movie. So years later, John Landis has come out and talked about a couple of things that he's regretting. So he kind of regrets kind of cutting and editing a couple scenes so that they could get the R rating. And then also, he thought that he had made the transformation scene too long. I personally thought the transformation scene was very, very cool. Did you have any viewpoint on that it was too long or anything like that?
It was great. It was great. I loved that whole scene. That scene was amazing.
And so I just thought that I could see...
That's just a sign of a perfectionist, though, right? Like, that guy's like...
You're
he's
never happy with your work, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I could see kind of like cutting a couple scenes or editing them so they could get the R rating. That could upset him. But I didn't see anything that was wrong with that transformation scene. And I thought that it would have been pretty revolutionary for that time period, for what was going on, right?
It's still revolutionary. Like, I don't think CGI could have done that any better. Right, I think that looks so great. That was so great.
And then when he first transforms, it leads to kind of some awesome scenes. I love that point of view camera angle in the subway tunnel. I thought that was awesome. I thought that was very, very cool. I love the fact that he woke up in that wolf exhibit. I thought that was pretty funny, and he kind of wakes up. He's like, "Oh, hey, I'll see you guys later," or something like that. I thought that was pretty ridiculous.
That was ridiculous. It was fun too.
And then so it leads to the part where he can't commit suicide. He just can't bring himself to do it, and then he transforms again, which I thought led to a wild scene where he kind of just outside the theater he bites that person's neck, and they become decapitated, and
that
the head like rolls down the hood of the car.
That was the lead detective.
Yeah, and so that was absolutely wild. Again, we're talking 1981, right?
I know.
Absolutely.
That was a crazy pandemonium scene outside that theater, though, right? All the cars crashing into him. They see this animal in the street, and there's people flying out the windshields. There's people flying out windows of buses and then getting run over. Like, that was a crazy scene, and it was well orchestrated.
And I loved all that, and I thought it was great. But then it leads me to my next issue. So they have the werewolf cornered down the alley.
Mm-hmm.
Number one issue. There is no way she gets through all those police. You know what I'm saying? To get by them?
Yeah. Here's the thing. I think it could go either way, and this is the only reason why I could think it could go either way. They're looking down that way, right? So she fought through a crowd to get to that front line of police, right? And they're not expecting people to come up behind them because they've blocked off that alleyway, they think, right? And they're looking down at where the threat is, the terror, which is the werewolf, right?
So they did have their backs to her.
Yeah, they did have their backs to her. So then she kind of gets through, and they're like, oh, wait, this is not right. And then, but by that point, she's muscled her way through, and she's in and she's out. And then now there's a bunch of cops pointing down range with guns. You're not running, right? You're not going to go after her.
No, okay, so, and that was my one thought, is that she did kind of come at the cops from behind and kind of burst through them, right? Yeah. But then she approaches the werewolf, kind of has her like whole monologue about I love you and this and that. And then the werewolf kind of makes its move, and these cops hit this long-range shot by her and take out the werewolf.
Dude, they had rifles with scopes. I don't have an issue with that.
They were so far away. Don't you remember that camera angle, how far away they were? And they
have you ever shot a rifle?
Obviously not with that accuracy.
Dude, rifles they're totally different. If you were to say, handgun, I'd be like, for sure. No way. There'd be so many bullets flying everywhere, and maybe one or two would have hit the werewolf by luck. And for sure her. But a rifle? No problem. No problem.
All right, I guess I'll have to take your word on that. And then I want to get your thoughts on this. I didn't necessarily have a problem with it. I just want to hear you out. Did you feel the ending was abrupt? It was kind of just like, boom, over.
Well, that was the main issue, and it was resolved.
Yeah, so no need for anything else, right?
I don't know what else I don't know if I'd want anything else. Like,
I don't know either. It was just the first thing that popped in my head. I'm like, oh, well, that was pretty abrupt.
Well, it's like, okay, he's dead. She's upset. And any other character that had any emotional tie to him, who cares?
For a horror comedy, it's just kind of, the movie ends with uncontrollable sobbing. Yeah.
I liked how every song in the movie had a moon in it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to check out that soundtrack. I had no idea.
It was pretty cool. Like, every time they played it was like Blue Moon or something Moon. Like, it was awesome. Yeah.
And if I ever open a pub, it's the Slaughtered Lamb. As
For
cool
sure,
of a
you're
name as
gonna
that.
when in that grotesque sign needs to be there as well.
This movie's a classic. Obviously, Rotten Tomato critic score 88, Rotten Tomatoes audience score 85, and with me seeing it, a 1981 film in 2019, I would rate it that high, which only speaks to how good this film was.
Yeah. So for storyline, I'm in the high 80s. For special effects, I'm in like the 90s. But if you like to separate the two, right?
Yeah.
But to put them both together, I'm in like the high 80s, low 90s.
And as I said, I'm embarrassed that I'd never seen this before. But again, I think you kind of get where I was coming from.
Yeah,
Came out
absolutely.
Before I was born, I didn't like the sequel. It's like, why am I gonna invest
No,
more
that's
time?
absolutely valid, right? So it's like if you don't like a movie in a franchise, why would you visit that franchise? No, it makes sense.
Which I feel dumb about, because your point of, well, if there's a sequel, the first one might have been good. But I guess my argument to that, Sharknado, how many of those have they made, right?
They're all good though.
Oh, okay. Killed it at money-wise. Budget $5.8 million, brought in 62.
Holy cow.
One interesting tidbit that I found, though, is that there was worries about making this film.
Why?
Because they thought that the film, that it was a little bit too scary to be a comedy and too funny to be a horror film.
Oh.
So you know what I mean? It
Yeah,
kind of was in that middle realm where it's like, I don't know how people are going to receive this thing,
Yeah.
right? Which I can kind of see. And as I said, there was a sequel, American Werewolf in Paris, which wasn't a very good movie,
No.
but it still speaks to how good this film was that there was a sequel.
Yeah.
And then I also read that in 2017, they had written the first draft of a remake of this.
Really?
But that was back in 2017, and I couldn't really find much else as to if this thing is still going ahead, if it kind of halted. But I thought that would be cool if they just like did a straight remake to see just how it would go.
Yeah, I don't mind remakes, because sometimes like some people are like dead against them, right? They're dead against remakes, like leave it alone, blah blah blah. I liked the Evil Dead remake. I thought it was awesome. It did a great job. I loved Evil Dead as well, right? But I really loved the remake, the new remake. So I'm of two minds of that. But this one is just like I don't know why you would do a remake. You'd have a whole new bumper crop of issues.
Well, you do a remake for the money, duh.
Come on. Well, I don't like. I'm you know me. I put the product first, right?
No, I hear you. But the one thing that you'll have issues with is, if they remake this film, just like the sequel, it'll be all CGI.
Yeah, no, I don't know. No. I think they have technology now to do practical effects very well. I think practical effects work very well in horror movies, and I think CGI works very well in like superhero movies, right? Like I think, from what superhero movies or action movies or whatever, but you don't get the same type of visceral punch as you do from the practical effects, right? Like look at Terrifier, right? Like that was all practical, and it was just it looked meaty, right? So when it looks meaty, it just has more of a punch to it. I think if they could incorporate that type of level of detail, where you almost actually can see the bits moving about or doing whatever with CGI, then I'd get on board.
Well, CGI is getting better and better as
For
technology gets better.
For sure,
and better, right?
that's what I mean, and I would get on board with that. But I'm just saying, it just looks so good. It looks so good.
And I hear what you're saying, but for me, with how much I like this movie, I would be very interested in seeing a straight remake. And I hope that they keep it on the same lines with the horror comedy and just all those. Like, it doesn't have to be a scene-by-scene, like, reshoot, but, like, keep, like, a lot of the stuff the same.
For
I'd
sure.
be very happy with that.
Well, and I'd absolutely go see it, too. Like, it's not like I wouldn't go see it. I'm just saying this might be one of those movies where you could leave well enough alone.
No, fair enough. Well, buddy, anything else to add about this one?
No.
Well, folks, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our Facebook page, and follow us on both Twitter and Instagram @DamnMovies. We want to hear what you thought of today's podcast and any suggestions you have, especially in terms of what movies you'd like us to discuss next. Send us an email to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. Please also check out John's full-length novels. His first two novels, Dollhouse and The Tracker, are Amazon bestsellers, and his new novella, Balance, is also available on Amazon. For further details on John's other published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, everyone, I hope you guys have a great week, and be kind to everyone.